about the missionary compounds in Shanghai in 1890 to like 1920. And it was just a walled world, separate from itself. I traveled in Yunnan with a retired minister who had been born in Shanghai. His father had been a Presbyterian missionary, and he didn't speak Chinese because it was a missionary. And it was just a different world. And they were really, and it got to the point that they were walled off, and they put their energies and the money into developing some hospitals, but especially educational institutions. So Beijing University started out as a missionary enterprise. Yenjing, it was called Yenjing, and it had a seminary. Nanjing University was a Presbyterian mission school. I mean, it's just, and now they're all government run, but that's really what they did. And nowadays there's quite a bit of appreciation for what that legacy was. So anyway, the most important, again, if you go anything, remember the flood control thing for the need for the authoritarian government. And if you ever study systems theory and history, you know that what happens in the early years really patterns the reality of a family, a congregation, or even a nation. That's extremely important as far as what the expected patterns will be for the rest of its time. So you really have to pay attention to the history because it makes a huge amount of difference. So anyway, so the Chinese Revolution comes in, just say like 1950s in that. And then there was a radical surge called the what? Cultural Revolution. And this was when things, I mean, I think it's still a little bit too soon to really look at it, but it was wild. I mean, it was just, things were really, really out of control. What does anyone know? Anyone know much about, heard anything about the culture?
Well, this was so brutal. I guess that's my understanding of it, is that they just, if you had any, if you were seen as an intellectual or an artist or something, you were either gotten rid of or humiliated or dragged through the streets, or, I mean, I guess I only know it through movies, movies and books, but I've always been so struck by, I mean, it just appeared to be an incredibly brutal thing that was going on.
Well, think about it.
Like plowing, they turned everything over.
Yeah.
The intellectuals were sent to the country to work in the fields, and the people were moved about. So that it was a complete turning over.
Yeah.
Remember Mao's little red book that was floating around on college campuses. Every student had a copy of it. And wasn't that kind of some of the basic fundamental beliefs and principles?
If you're going to kick out this traditional and hierarchical system that has been effective in the society for millennia, suddenly you have a completely blank slate. And what happens? It's just like, then you start taking it to its logical extreme. And Mao is kind of the charismatic, eventually becoming the charismatic leader. Is writing these things about equality and women hold up half the sky, and all this really good idealistic change. And some of the people sort of, especially students, some people who traditionally did not have power, were able to gain quite a bit of power. They were called the Red Guards, and they were given a lot of permission to, we talked about the apple trees. Missionaries had brought apple trees to China, and so during the Cultural Revolution there were Red Guards who came and cut down all the apple trees because they were a foreign implant. Just think about it, it's just crazy. Wait a minute, they produced apples in a country that needs food. I mean, what are you thinking? We hear a lot about the extremes, but a lot of those extremes were true. The sending of the intellectuals into the countryside, originally it's called Shafang, which it's not really a bad idea. It was only supposed to be for a couple weeks. you know? But if you take a professor and make them go work in the field for a couple of weeks, that's not bad, you know, every year. Think about it. What if we had to go, you know, be a worker somewhere in some back-breaking, difficult job? It might have a, you know, I think it's a pretty good policy, actually. But then it got out of control. Then it was just simply sending them out there, and that was it. People were
It was a way of exile, too.
Yeah.
Keep them from influencing.
So I mean, so you have a good idea. It's a good idea that fits with the ideology of equality, and then when it gets implemented, it gets skewed and taken advantage of by people who are in power and want to stay in power, regardless of what the ideology is. So like the professors and the intellectuals, an intellectual was defined as someone who graduated from high school. That was an intellectual, somebody who had graduated from high school. But among the intellectuals that you were, I mean, it would be wonderful if we had better language abilities, because to hear their stories, how did they persist?